didn't realize we were doing the microphone. Welcome, everyone. Policy Review Committee Agenda, City of Merritt. Our first meeting, June 21st, 2023. Recommendation, I do not see the land acknowledgement. Do I do that? Do not see it here.
Yes, sir.
So give me 1 second. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inca-Kapma and the Silk people. So, no problem. Call to order, adoption of minutes. Policy Review Committee meetings, August 21st, 2021, which you were all at. Actually, only Adam was at that one. Recommendation that the minutes of the Policy Review Committee being held on August 21st, 2021 be adopted. Oh, I made an error.
I don't know if I should speak or not here. I just noticed that the minutes were not actually attached to the agenda.
I noticed that as well. Okay. So I just thought I would go ahead. I just thought we would go ahead. So I guess what we will do is adopt them and have them then circulated, I'm assuming. Is that what we'll do? We're bringing forward to the next meeting? Okay. Yep. So let me reread it. Recommendation that the minutes of the Policy Review Committee meeting held on August 21st, 2020 be adopted and brought to the next meeting.
Not adopted.
Oh, just brought to the next meeting. Sorry, brought to the next meeting. Yes, sorry. Next
meeting. It's all right.
Meeting. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Unfinished business none. New business, mobile food vendors. This item was referred to the committee from May 9th, 2023 regular council meeting. And you have it in front of you. So, I think, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read all through this and everything else that has gone on. So, we received, March 14th, 2023, received a declaration from food truck vendor, Lee, and requested staff to provide information on the options to amend the City of Merritt Mobile Food Concession Business Regulation Bylaw 2081-2009. So there's the current status. I'm not going to read the whole thing. There's the current status of where we are. And I think it's timely because I do believe we are starting to look at more food trucks starting to come to events. The drag race was a classic example of food trucks coming, and I know there's two other in the community. Councillor,
no, keep going.
You are doing your thing. No, I'm going to jump right in there. I'm just babbling away. You go right ahead. You're blinking.
Yes, because when you're done,
okay,
I'm ready.
I'm done. Over to you.
Okay, so I just have a question on going forward on how, if we want to just speak on the parts that we think we need an amendment or discussion, or do we need to adopt this first and then speak on it? I know there's different ways to do this.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Newman, essentially, as things currently stand, the policy is as the policy is. If you choose not to have any votes today, which is an option available to you, then we would simply continue with the policy and the mobile food trucks bylaw as they are currently laid out. Essentially, as a committee, I think what we'd love would be if you could talk about any parts of the policy or the bylaw that you have strong opinions about, whether you are for or against, and then at the end, if you could make recommendations to either the wording that you would like to have in there to make the policy how you would like it, or else instructions to staff on either further research you would like done or drafting language to come up with that you don't currently have at this time.
Perfect. So with that, then we don't need to pass anything to just discuss it. So my first one is the booking system in regards to the food trucks. I think that it's on page 6 of 34, halfway down. I think that's a great idea, but I'm just wondering if this proposed system could be used for anything else in-house. I would hate to go ahead and make this a huge IT expense when it's essentially for 20 spots over the course of the year. So if we could use it, I was thinking like clay banks in the future or a different reservation system if there was options for that.
CEO Smith.
Thank you. To my knowledge, we weren't actually proposing a new software tool. The booking system would be the same booking system that you have for any municipal, like you want to go in and book Spirit Square or whatever it is, you would be able to book these spots at any of the given parks in the same way that you do. That is likely how we would start the build out. If it grows from there, lots of demand, that's getting unwieldy or whatever it is, we could do something different. But for the park spaces, that's likely how we would approach it.
So no additional cost for implementation? Okay.
Other than the existing booking software that we use to book all of our facilities.
Okay, that's excellent. So that's just on that point for now, so far?
Councillor Richard.
Thanks. I think the system looks good with the park locations that are there, because I think people really want to know where they're going to be, because I know a few weeks ago that there was one of the food trucks up near the Dairy Queen area and whatnot. So if we have these permit areas, I think we really need to refresh and discuss with the rest of council where they're going to be, because people paying for their building and their business license and everything like that, having a food truck right beside, say, Dairy Queen, I think it was a few weeks ago, one of the units was up there, and they may have a business license, but we really need to kind of have defined areas of where they're going to be, because this is the first time I've seen the park locations and spots, and I think it's really key, because if we have complaints and people calling and complaining, we need to really kind of know, these are the refreshed areas, this is how many spots, and when they're going to book their spot, or whatever the case may be. Because I didn't know that these were the designated spots before, but nice to see that.
They're not currently. This is what they would be if you chose to make them.
Yep.
Right now, it's, hey, if you want to be on the road, we don't have a way to stop you. So that's why we get complaints from the Dairy Queen to Wolves.
And I think it's only fair for people who rent or own their building and, pay for a parking lot. And anyway, sorry. Thanks.
The current regulations are that in any commercial area, you can park a food truck for 3 hours.
Yep.
So up at DeWolf Way, that's a commercial area. So right now you can park a food truck up there. And yes, it is causing conflict between the bricks and mortar stores, which is what we have talked about in this report as well. Mm-hmm. If there's any appetite to have a certain distance, which is what some municipalities have done, is a certain distance away from brick and mortar stores or designated locations. So staff, they've just proposed some locations that could work. We can certainly investigate more options. If the committee would like more options, we can do that as well.
So I'm assuming, Ms. Brick, and we go ahead with this and we use the mapping that we've had here. Mm-hmm. This will be a package that will be handed out to prospective food truck people once they get their licensing, so they know exactly where they're going to go.
Ideally, we would have all of this on a website, very comprehensive on there, so that anybody who is interested in getting a business license, locating here, having information out there on how they would book these spots. And it can be as easy as an email or through our booking service.
CEO Smith?
Yeah, the other thing that I'll add is what you see here is probably not exactly what you would get, because we just needed to convey the message to you guys. You'll get more than some little yellow squiggly lines on the map. Yeah. And so what we actually talked about with recreation was making sure that we have a well built out, easily available list of bookable facilities online, so that people know that, oh, okay, I didn't realize I could book Spirit Square. I didn't know that was an option. What is the cost for that? Oh, wait a second, it's free. Like, there are certain things that we just don't think is information that's well disseminated. You can come in and talk with Jamie or others at the Civic Center and find that information out. But if you don't know how to go do that, or you're trying to find it conveniently elsewhere, it's difficult. So, that would likely be part of this.
Just jump in. I'm just leaving everybody's mics on. Just jump in.
I like the fee structure. I don't see in the report, personally, no 3-day permit. The 3-month minimum at $55, you have to set minimum somewhere. I think for the administration and the time that you spend on some of these things, it would be a poor use of time to have a 3-day permit. Do your 3-month minimum. Lots of corporations, including ICBC, have 3-month minimums and different things. I say go for it. It's only $50. Businesses in town, restaurants have to do their annual license. I don't think we should bother with a 3-day permit.
So the resolution to consider forwarding amendments, so 3 days, 15, or whatever. So I would tend to agree to a certain fact that, I mean, if you're if you're going to be going through the season, there's a good chance that if you're from out of town doing an event here, you're going to come back at some point during the season. You've got Base Coast, you've got Airport Appreciation Day, then you'll have the drag races. So at some point, I'm assuming you're going to come back, whereas the 3 months would cover that.
And I'm even in support of eliminating the 3 month. At this point, the administration behind it is, I don't know, I look at it like generally a food truck, you can get a good 6 months worth of service in our climate. It's easily attainable, anywhere from May to November, I think is, generally a good climate and food trucks. Now, I, on the other hand, just going back to the location of the trucks, I'm not opposed to food trucks. I mean, being right in front of a business, yes, 100%. I support the distance mandates, but we are talking about parking a food truck in front of 6 different fast food areas up at the gasoline alley. So, I mean, there is already healthy competition. I think it actually spurs businesses to keep on their toes and do what they need to do to encourage growth in our community. And I think that the food trucks, I mean, as I said, not right in front of another, I wouldn't say park in front of it, but I definitely see the benefits to having multiple food trucks in our community and getting people out and engaged and doing outside things. It's just something that's a belief to me, at least. And again, they're only temporary. They're not here for days and days on end. But I can't argue when Dairy Queen has a Mary Brown's beside it and a Mary Brown's has something else beside it, and then there's a pub beside it. So are they saying that a truck pulling up is the worst competition, or the $1 million giant sitting right beside them is the worst competition? I don't know.
Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag that many of the complaints aren't actually about the competition. It's very often about the congestion because they're on the other side, and so it always happens to be during busy times. So we'll pick a long weekend or whatever the case is, and anybody that's been up at Wolf Way on long weekends knows that if you're local, you stay away as best as you can because you're going to get trapped. And so when you have stuff happening on the other side of the road, it's just adding to that congestion, people running across the road, whatever the case is. And so that is what a number of the complaints are in that particular area. And so even if council did have a desire to proceed with doing this in commercial zones, it would highly recommend that there still be some exclusion areas and that be one of them for safety reasons.
Yep. I agree. What about the removing the time limit? That was one of the questions that Lee had a problem with, or things, is that the 3-hour time limit just didn't seem, by the time you set up and get ready and then all of a sudden have to tear it down 3 hours later, it's time to move on.
Well, I support a full
up onto Wolf Way. Yes, there's other businesses and they pay a small fortune in fees, owning the building, maintaining the building, all the expenses that go along with that. And if you can have a food truck that's allowed to stay there, at any location, people pay a lot of money for these locations and to have a building with seating and bathrooms.
But
I'm not against that. It's just that at the same time, with no restriction on distance, wouldn't it be more insulting if they parked in their parking lot or almost right on the edge and we're taking business away from that business that's paying?
Well, I support a distance regulation. I just don't.
Like up at the Wolf Way, if they went down to where the RVs park and where you do the turnaround.
At the end, yeah.
If they were there, I can see 5 hours or whatever. But and bringing back to CEO Smith's, I do get nervous when I see a food truck set up on the Wolf Way there that's now taking up parking spots, and there are people all over the place. It's nerve-wracking. Yeah. And then people jut out behind right onto the road as people are coming in and out. So I would like to get them completely off of that area and move them down, and that's why I like the plan of the map where they can go. And I mean, the 3 hours I don't think is long enough, because sitting in Toronto, we watched, the food trucks are very big, remember? And they would come in almost an hour before lunch to get set up and get ready to go. And if it's a 3 hour, that's an hour lost, and then it takes them another 40 minutes to tear down. Yeah. So really their time of sell is an hour and 35 minutes. And maybe that covers the lunch, but some people take later lunches, you know what I mean, sort of thing, and other people come into town. Yeah.
Or some don't take lunch.
So for myself, I think the 3 hour time I think needs to be extended, but in the zones that we set for them to be in. And I think it's very critical that we have correct zones for them to be in. I do. I mean, that's just me. We'll wrap this all up to a certain degree. It's just, we're just yakking away here.
And so, here's one, the noise.
Decibels, yes.
Decibels. How many complaints have we had to date about this noise of a food truck?
Do you want me to fill in, or do you have some numbers? Because I've talked to Wes about this.
Okay, if you've already talked to him.
Yeah, I've talked to Wes about this. So most of the time, let's say they're setting up, let's use Rotary Park where the spray booth is. It's the people in Parkview that complain about the noise.
But how many recorded complaints do we have about the noise?
I don't know if we have actually any to a certain degree. And here's the situation. It doesn't matter whether we have complaints about the noise or not. We have no way of measuring what the decibel level is.
Which
we don't have a meter. Now in Vancouver, I did some looking around. Vancouver is 75 decibels is where they're happy with. And that's a big enough generator to run whatever they need to run. But here, we go by our bylaw guy's ear. That's not going to work. Now, decibel meters can be put on these phones. It's an app. It's easy enough to get. So, and I was talking to a gentleman last night at this event, or at the deal event up at Boston Pizza, and that's exactly what they've done with their food trucks, guys. Is the bylaw guy has an app on his phone, and he does the decibels, and they've set the decibel level. So, other communities have a power draw, so they don't have to use. But then again, that comes into the fact that now we have to charge them X amount of dollars for the power, right? So.
But that's, the way I look at it with the decibels is, I hate having a bylaw or something that we're going to make our already working bylaw officer have one more reason to go out and have to enforce a bylaw that we have no complaints about. Like it would be something to me if there was, oodles and oodles of people's calling and saying, oh, the food trucks, they're driving me nuts right now, it's too loud. If they're during business hours, there's construction trucks that make just as much noise.
What we can do is, as part of the business licensing process, we can measure and see what their decibel levels are at that point. That way we're not enforcing it. It is already done. The expectation is already set at the very beginning of the process for a food truck.
That would be ideal.
And also, when if we're going to be putting food trucks specifically in parks where children are playing, as they're coming up, some of the one experience that we have had in the past, we've only got a few food trucks in the city at this point, was that there was no regulator on the generator, so it was really quite noisy, and we had to work with that person to get something kind of created, and it's a matter of kind of having something there so we have a standard.
And I think it shows interest too, like for us, I like that idea.
Quick question, I noticed that we had all these locations. Are we going to add anything for the rodeo ground?
For the rodeo ground, if they were in the rodeo ground, it would be outside of city property.
But in the park, we don't have to regulate their parking lot because it's their own private property. But
it's on private property, so that would fall under private property.
Okay, just making sure.
One thing that I'll add that we'll need to change as well, do disregard, note that we call the bench park, it's called Lions Park in this, in the attachment. It is, in fact, not Lions Park, in case there's any confusion on that.
Okay, and then you also do Benchfield. You did bring up the power. I'm not necessarily in favor of any food truck using municipal power.
If you talk the food trucks, there's not enough power coming out of that anyway to keep it viable, or they blow the breakers, right? So, and I would prefer we just keep it that way.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I think when you come to these food trucks, they're mobile as it stands, anyways. They're meant to be transferring their own power, so I mean
that's a cost to us to upgrade to a 200 amp service or 300 amp service or something like that.
So is that something then that we would recommend not even including?
I would be more than happy for them to be self-sustained. That's just me. I do not want to see us have to spend taxpayers' dollars on upgrading an electrical grid for food trucks that are not even, mostly of the time, not from this community. So I would be more than happy just to be totally self-contained.
So do you want these as each one that we go through, that we realize that that's a recommendation going forward to council, that we would say that we are not recommending that power be an option, or we just omit it going forward?
If you make the recommendations on what you would like a positive recommendation, that would be great. Anything that is left off, we wouldn't explore any further.
Okay, so power, and is that something that you guys also agree with, or you would like to see power? Power?
I think the reality is that if people are going to be in Central Park for a ball weekend, and they're going to be for many hours, I think having a generator and enough fuel without having to go and fill up the tanks on a regular basis would be a challenge. And I think what we could do, or maybe we should consider, is if you're going to be plugging into power, the permit is this much, and then have a set fee, just to help with the cost.
So you want to investigate then the cost of the power upgrade that we need to have?
It wouldn't necessarily be a power upgrade if they have enough cords, if there's outlets already in there.
We need the outlets upgraded.
Are there any outlets coming off the...
The only ones that I'm aware of are the ones in the band shell. I don't know what would be, unless they're extending cords to go all the way across the field to the food concession stand.
Yeah.
And discussing with Lee that it's a constant breaker situation when he uses city power.
Yeah, so then...
And the report says that we would have to do an upgrade, I think, right? So that's on page 7.
Yep. Chair Smith.
One thing that I would add is that you could absolutely designate the park spots with no upgrades for right now, and if there are future additions, like for example, if in the area aside from the Sandy Station on the other side of Claybanks RV Park, if that does get developed into more of a park asset where you end up rounding that out, you might look as part of an overall upgrade to say, hey, it makes sense here to put in 3 electrical stations. It would be sufficient to support food trucks or something along those lines. But I think that you've got a really easy path forward right now to say, let's just designate these with
no power
upgrades. If you hear feedback and there's one particular location that you think maybe we want to change that at Central Park or whatever it is, I would just push that down the road as you've had some more feedback on it.
Because the current vendor that we have in town basically is now bypassing our electrical because it just constantly kicks out. So he can't get prepared correctly.
But he has his own truck.
He has his own generator and everything, and that's what he relies on. Now, he would like to see power, but I don't think at taxpayers' expense that's where we should be going. So I would make the recommendation that we kind of omit that the power situation and they be self-sustained.
If it would have to, it'd be too much cost.
Do you have to call that?
Yeah. So do we want to call everything at the end, or do you want us to finalize it as we go along?
I'm making some notes. You can certainly finalize it as we go along, or we can do it at the end. It's
basically, the motion on the floor is that we do not do power upgrades, and we have the vendors be self-sustained and keep the cost down. We could look at it later on.
And this is a recommendation that will go forward at the next council meeting, correct?
Yep, or whenever.
Yeah. Okay. Second.
Okay, second by Councillor Richard. Oh, sorry. Councillor
or Richard, whichever.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Can I just interject on one point there?
Sure.
Very often in this committee, what we do is we'll take your first draft, it's going to come back as here's what we think we heard from you back to this committee, and then it will be that final version. That way it's just not back and forth so many times.
I like that.
It tends to work better.
Yeah.
So then, I guess if we just went along as far as this report goes, then we could just go to the next part, which is the noise.
Yes.
And then if it would be easiest to say that I liked Ms. Brick's suggestion of, including that in the initial stages of having the food truck come in versus having something that bylaw is enforcing, and then that we're having a decibel reader. At least it shows we're interested, and then if we get complaints, we can go from there.
The only downside to that is, of course, it only is relevant for the ones that the City of Merritt licenses. So let's say we've got 8 coming in as part of a festival. technically speaking, they're all supposed to get our license. We all recognize this. Has that happened religiously each and every time so far? It has not. And so if it's directly just tied to the getting of a license, and somebody says, this thing's so loud, we can go in and get them for not having a license at that point, but it wouldn't be for a decibel thing. So I think the big question is how much does council care? Because if you don't care that much, I don't think the number of complaints has been huge. There had been some complaints, or at least one complaint, I don't know if it's one or multiple, that was in the Central Park area. And so when somebody calls, we deal with it. But if you're not worried about it, or at least you're not worried about it for now, you can just leave it. Or if you want to,
like, leave it out? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the fact that it'll work very well for our local, but this is going to be a lot harder to do a decibel test in advance for somebody who's going to show up at some event, and the first time we're ever going to see them is when they get here for that event. Yet we require them to have a business license before that, so if we make that test a requirement of getting your business license, it's going to be awfully...
Can they not provide it?
They're going to give you a certificate.
Most generators now come with decibel levels marked on them. You can actually see it on the...
I mean, I'm not concerned either way.
Well, the only thing that I'm concerned here is, I agree with what C.O. Smith is saying, but we got to have a number. Like, we got to have a decibel level that we can't go past. We don't have that at this point. So how can we verify, like, most food vendors in Vancouver are 75 decibels, and that's a generator large enough to cover every single thing that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Which is pretty big.
But if we don't have a number that we have to fall back on, let's say someone complains they don't have a business license, and you go to do a decibel reading, and we don't have in this bylaw what we're prepared to be at, then we have nothing. So what do we say to them? Oh, you're pretty loud. But I mean, if they're hitting 75, then they're in. If they're above that, then there has to be a change made.
Or we're not, as C.O. Smith said too, and Ms. Brick, if we're not that concerned, if it's not a thing right now, we can always amend this next year or the year after or whenever. If we get 5 complaints or 25 that they're really loud, instead of putting something in there, just to have something in there is also...
But if we do send the bylaw officer to answer a complaint and we don't have a bar for him to attain, what's the point of even sending it?
Why don't we compare with other communities, and if they use 75, just use that then? Because, I mean, I'm okay either way. 75 is reasonable. If that's what they're using as a standard, I'd say use that.
Most on the coast.
I want to remove it.
I get the point. We don't want to micromanage her, but if we do send the bylaw officer, what's he going to go check? Because he has no number to fall back on.
Is it possible because who are the trucks that have the mobile business license that are like for multiple communities?
Intercommunity
business license, yeah. Are we able to maybe just check with those communities that are included in that and see?
Mobile vending trucks, so food trucks are not included in that. So each municipality, they have to get a business license.
They still do, okay.
It's kind of one of the few things that's excluded that would be considered mobile.
Of course.
There's an ongoing discussion about whether they should be included or not, but at this point we're not recognizing ICBLs. One thing I would like to draw the committee's attention to today is the noise prohibition regulations in the Good Neighbor bylaw. So this is essentially these are the noise regulations that we have in the city of Merritt at this time. And that is the somewhat subjective standard that no person shall make or cause or permit to be made or cause any noise or sound which disturbs or tends to disturb the quiet, peace, rest, enjoyment, comfort, or convenience of the neighborhood or the persons in the vicinity. So if you were sending a bylaw officer to investigate a noise complaint, that's the standard that they're held to. So at the moment, we don't have a clear decibel question. We don't have any readings to detect decibel levels. And it comes down to the very subjective interpretation of, are you disturbing the quiet, peace, rest, and enjoyment? And then that's obviously going to be different in different situations. Say, in the middle of a ball tournament in Central Park, there's a different standard for what kind of noise disturbs people than at 3 a.m. in a residential area.
Well, I mean, taking point fireworks on Halloween. When they transition from one set of fireworks, there's a great big huge explosion that happens. That's like 140 decibels, right? And that's all over town. So you're right, it changes whatever you're doing. I just would like myself, I don't want to make a rule for the sake of a rule, but there has to be some sort of a number that we can say, okay, because if you send him to a loud truck and he says, I think you're too loud, and they're saying, well, what's the law say? And it's like, well, I don't know, we don't have a number.
No.
That's not going to fly.
No, it's the bylaw.
What did you say?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. You know?
And that's especially when the bylaw officer in that situation has to be very confident that he can stand behind, in my reasonable interpretation, you are being too loud. And as you correctly say, it is, if you're not having a clear line to cross over, then you do have to be able to justify that in individual situations, which becomes hard when people turn around and say, well, I disagree, I think this is totally reasonable in this situation. Yeah.
So maybe we should talk about tabling this with a little bit more.
Well, or as they suggested earlier, staff suggested earlier, it will come back to us again before going to council, so maybe we have staff investigate neighboring communities as to what theirs is, and if they come back with 75, sure, 75 it is. It's.
So
the other thing I was going to say is because we don't currently regulate the noise from lawnmowers right now either, do we?
No.
And so, I mean, as long as somebody's not trying to mow their lawn at 11 p.m., I guess they're not really being shut down either.
Yeah.
Of course, bylaw's not around at 11 p.m. anyway.
But you don't have to have a business license to cut your lawn.
No.
So,
Not so
I'm
far.
just saying, again, you don't want to be that guy, but I think we should just move this thing and let staff see what is out there and what the numbers are. If that's
Yeah,
okay.
and so like the recommendation that's on page 7.2 says that council directs staff to bring forward regulations implementing, and I think that would be fair.
I think that's the
And I'll move
resolution we
that.
can go with.
Yeah.
I need a seconder on that.
Anybody want to second
Want to
that?
second that, eyebrows? I see the eyebrows go up. Sure. Councilor Richard does that. Seconded.
Perfect.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The right eyebrow disagrees, but
Well, at least one does.
So I guess dropping back to the time limit, we have on page 6, the bring forward amendments by the bylaw which would remove the 3-hour time limit for on-street locations.
I support that.
Do we want to stay with the 3-hour? Do we may want to make a change? One of the complaints that Leah's had most of the time is that 3 hours simply is not enough time to set up, get prepared, and then tear down.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And I would just add that if you are going to move to a model where we identify bookable locations, we just, however long they book it for is how long they
That's a good
get
point.
it for, right? And so if you're going to do that one, then definitely drop the 3-hour requirement and let's just leave it to whatever the booking system sets out.
So with the booking system, so and this brings up another thought is, well, what if somebody only wants to be there for lunch, and then can another truck go to the same location at dinner, and we've got a 5 hours? So my thought is it's going to have to be a 24-hour, like, not that they're allowed to be there for 24 hours, but it's that day's pass.
Well, I think you could set it up theoretically where somebody was there for a lunch, they are required to be out by such and such a time, somebody else has a booking for the dinner. This is all really moot because it's not going to happen very often. But could it theoretically happen? I think that the booking system would allow for that without it being hey, you've got it for a full day.
Okay.
Is it maybe something that we would recommend after talking with the team, that it's just easier that if you're going to do it, you've got it on this day, it's yours for the day? Maybe that's how we would recommend this. But what I can definitely say is that no matter what, the 3-hour time limit isn't going to line up with the booking system well.
I'd be in favor of 5.
Well, so let's, okay, on page 6, we have those 3 recommendations right there. So kind of covers everything. So council directs staff to bring forward amendments to the bylaw which would remove the 3-hour time limit for on-street locations, but that could be handled in the booking situation.
Yeah, I think you just remove it altogether.
So just scratch it.
All 3 of them? Or just, well, we'll do that one.
No, I'd rather do them one at a time.
Okay, 6, page 6 of 34.
The council.
It's halfway down, it says there's three recommendations right in a row.
So I would be in favor also of just removing the first one.
Okay. Councilor Richard, you okay with that?
I'm looking at 6 of 6 on there. It has the 3 options. I'm not sure what you're meaning about.
We're going to remove, like the very first one in bold, the council directs staff to bring forward amendments. We're just going to scratch that. We're not going to put amendments in there.
Can I just try to put a bit of framework on this for a moment? So at the very kind of top, so it's on page 3 of the report, one of our first recommendations is that we bring forward a recommendation to move the business license bylaw itself and incorporate those, to move the mobile food concession business regulation bylaw and put it in the business license bylaw, so that's where we deal with all of these regulations. So first thing is we got to figure out which bylaw it is that we're amending. Are you guys supportive of us taking this, whatever content you ultimately direct, and moving that into the business license bylaw?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so if you're comfortable with that, do you guys want a resolution on that, or do you just want to take this direction?
I think we'll just take the direction.
Okay, yes. So now that we've got that and we know that we're doing this in the business license bylaw, next one up is, are we removing the 3-hour time requirement?
Yes.
I think if you have this designated spots.
Yeah, with the booking and designated spots, the 3-hour, like you say, the booking. So yes, we're removing the 3-hour.
Okay.
Yes.
That we will bring back recommendations for identifying those on-street and in-park locations.
Okay.
Yes.
Will likely look similar to what you have here, but you'll see a finalized version of that at the next one. And then that we'll set up the booking system to support that.
Okay. And then we're going to remove, and then going, so those are those 3 recommendations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we keep going on the rest of the?
Correct. You already gave us
Remove power.
some on, let's not do additional power generation. You've told us to bring back some best practices on decibel reading, and then an amendment to the bylaw to actually provide some enforceability to this is your last one.
Okay.
For the sound?
Yeah.
Just compliance generally. We don't have any fines associated with this at the moment.
Yeah, currently there's no enforcement mechanism whatsoever in the bylaw that is currently operating. So while it says that you can't do it, there's no way to prevent somebody from doing it, and there's no recourse.
So just a question. The last one that directs staff to bring forward amendments to the bylaw, which would restrict parking of mobile phone vendors within a distance of. Now, that booking system with these suggestions would cover that as well?
So that one was an or. So if you didn't do the other ones, so either you'll set out specific locations where they will go and they won't go in any other spots, or you could not worry about that and leave it loosey-goosey.
Okay, I see it now.
So then what happens though in the event of market days and street closures where we do allow trucks to be in a certain area?
We'll build in provisions for if there's road closures or events or whatever the case is.
And that would be another thing, like I'm thinking, so in the park, like occasionally like at airport day or those things that we do have farmers market
days or something.
Yeah, like I'd like to see an inclusion on that, or like, because I think that's important that we recognize food trucks may become a bigger thing in our community.
You are completely reading my mind here. I love it. One thing that has been brought up is that in our business license bylaw, it talks about farmers markets, and so you can have a food truck at a farmer's market, but it's only at a farmer's market, and farmer's market is defined. So at an event like airport days or a drag race or the Elvis Festival, food trucks have to have a business license, which is causing a bit of a challenge with the people that are coming to the community and want to operate under that event umbrella. Right now they can't do that. Would you like us to change it to kind of include events or keep it under farmers markets?
That's a tough one because I think the event organizers have a due responsibility to the city to make sure their people are following the rules.
We can also just bring back some recommendations on that, because I think that there are some communities that have done it where if they've defined community event as any event that requires no fee to attend, and they have a different set of requirements for that versus if this is something like the drag race where you have to pay to attend it, they are going to have a different standard for that than they would if this is a, community fair or something like that.
I think the difference is too, is if you have something at the airport, that's a city property too. So it's not a park, but
we
city
already charge to get in, like CAO says, that's kind of different, right?
well, the drag race is private property again, right? And you have to pay to get in there. So we wouldn't have any jurisdiction, but the airport, we would have to think about that.
But the drag races were at the airport.
The city
Yeah, but we'd still have to decide if we want to include that in the farmer's market.
I like the idea of bring back the options on, if they charge for events or if they don't. And that could not be the option, but I'd like to see a few, I think.
The thing we always care about on the city side is, do you have your interior health? Do you have the proper fire inspections? Like, those are the things that really matter. We're not in this to try and gouge people.
Right.
We are in this to make sure that they're doing this in a safe way, and it's something that is going to be healthy for the patrons at the end of the day. We don't want folks to just, be grilling out of the back of their truck or whatever it is. Guys,
Tailgate parties.
Although fun.
So the other thing, we do have a group that is considering doing a food truck war situation in town, where they bring in 30 food trucks and have them on a special day.
I love it.
That would have to fall under the event situation because.
But in that case, I think that could possibly spur additional business licenses too, because if there's 30 trucks coming in and it becomes a thing where these 30 trucks want to come back because they love it here and they had a great day, then are we making the event kind of so that they don't have to apply for a business license, which is what we want them to do, essentially.
So I think bringing back some information, that would be probably
I think we have to, because what do we do at Mountain Fest? There must have been one event policy where everybody made it up to the property, and as long as they had their fire inspection from whatever jurisdiction, if they were from Vancouver through Coastal Health or whatever.
And private property again, right? Like that's... Or the event organizer. I'd like to see that come back as well, that what is the due diligence on an event for an organizer? Obviously, they reach out to each and every single person that comes to book in, right? So how does that look?
I don't think that's an obviously, just so you know. People say, hey, I want to show up, and
they say, yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
So I think that's part of what needs to be standardized as part of this.
Agreed.
There was quite a few conversations that I was privy to with Linda and Greg for the last one, where it's, you don't have any of the right stuff. Well, we're going to come sell this anyways. Well, no.
No, you're not. And then, so with those, how does it work though still for our park? We talked about not offering power, but you will still include park options for parking on certain events, or does that go to the event again?
Well, there's parking at the park now.
But what happens if there's a huge event going on and there's not those parking spots available,
They're
right?
designated.
I think that I would recommend, let us bring you back a framework that makes sense on that.
I agree. Anything else on the food truck situation?
So are we going with an overall recommendation of, on the last page, of 3? Bring back the options and further investigation?
Yeah, if you guys want to tidy it up in a resolution, the council direct staff to prepare amendments to the business license bylaw as discussed in this meeting or something like that, and that way we'll just bring it back to the committee next time.
I like that.
Yep.
I'll move it. Bring it back to the...
Yeah.
I'll second it. Have you got that, Mr. Laus? Look at him typing away like a madman. All those in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you.
Oh, I do have one more question in regards to the bylaw.
Oh, go ahead.
Just the $2 million, I just wondered if that is still standard, and I know we have somebody in the room that...
$1 million now.
Liability insurance, we only ask for $35 million now.
So that would be included in it when it comes back. Okay, perfect. And we'll do it like red score with the redactions and so we can see what it was and is, because it's always nice for reference.
We can do that as well.
Thank you.
The only challenge with that, of course, is we're not actually going to use this bylaw because it's going into a different bylaw.
Yeah.
So we'll try and create a table or something.
Something to indicate the changes that.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
4.2, use of City Hall assigned vehicles policy. So, the city aims to provide for control and security of vehicles assigned to City Hall use and keep clear records of vehicles assigned for this purpose. There's one vehicle assigned for use at City Hall, and you see the objectives in front of you there.
Can I ask why this came here?
So currently the city is undergoing a comprehensive review of all of the policies that the city is using. These are the first 4 of those policies that it's the first time we've had the committee meeting. That's an opportunity. So with all of these policies being reviewed. These are council policies. This is a policy review committee. They're being brought forward for your review to see if you are okay with the proposed changes in them. If not, provide us with direction on changes that we can make, and then these will come forward to council for final approval.
Oh, okay, so there was somebody didn't bring this up that this needed to be, it's just part
We
of
are
the
looking
process.
at every single policy that we have to make sure that they are all current, and going to bring them all forward.
Okay.
They're coming forward in bits and pieces.
That's
just so that
fine.
you guys do not have to sit here for 5 hours going through every single policy that you have.
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Worship. And if I can just draw the committee's attention to essentially the two policies side by side on the screen. As you can see, there's some quite a degree of detail in the order policy where it instructs, for example, very specifically on where the vehicle should be parked when they're not in use, or various other things. And so I think the proposal behind the new policy is essentially to make sure that everything is, and there's inaccuracies in it. For example, we now have two vehicles assigned for use at City Hall, not just one. So the new wording would be not only more flexible and respond well to whether we have 1, 2, 0, 3, etc. vehicles, but it would also allow for a little more flexibility, like we're highly likely to leave these vehicles parked in the parking lot, but we would now be allowed to, I don't remember the last time I saw them actually parked in one of the 3 lots that we're supposed to use according to this policy.
And okay, so this was the original, is this how it works, that this was the original policy, this is the...
Other way around.
So this was the original, this is
That's
what
correct.
we're proposing?
Yes.
I've got drafts written across the draft policies.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add one point as well, because I don't know if we did the general policy procedure difference and distinction. So one of the things that is challenging in every municipality that has ever existed is the separation of policy and procedure. Policy is always council's, it's the high level, hey, we want you to have rules on this kind of stuff. Procedure is what you're going to do to actually put that policy into action. So one of our challenges is that most policies that we have contain a ton of procedure, which means that if you want to change something, like where you park the vehicles, we have to come get an amendment from council in order to park our cars in a different spot. Like, it's just asinine and makes absolutely no sense. So what would happen with all of these is you're going to have an accompanying procedure to say, hey, here's what you do. You're going to keep the logbook for this. This is where you're going to keep the gas card. All of these different things for using the vehicle, but it's not going to be baked into the policy itself, because at the end of the day, council doesn't actually care how you get a thing done. You just want to make sure that we're getting the thing done. And so the idea here is that we don't want to have to come back to council to change procedure. We only want to come back to you to change policy. Sensible? Mm-hmm. That's the overarching purpose behind it. And so where there is procedure in policy, you're going to see a routine thing over the course of your 3-year term here, where we're going to propose stripping the procedure out and leaving it at its policy level. Sometimes the policy is going to be a lot more robust than this on things that you're going to have much stronger opinions on, but you don't really need to flesh out, hey, this is how we're going to use city vehicles. We want you to have a process in place and that it is going to be assigned in only used for municipal purposes. So
I think we would all assume that anyway, but having it not specific to a specific spot seems
thou shalt not joyride.
I'm assuming the fire department vehicles don't fall under this?
They would still technically... interesting. Good question.
Because right now they're, during the weekends and stuff, they're all over the place.
Yeah, you are raising a good point.
But that's considered an emergency vehicle. Well, it's
it is, some people are on call, but there are times where I know someone isn't on call and the truck is up at Walmart.
This policy actually speaks specifically for use of City Hall assigned vehicles.
Yeah, I see that. And that's why I'm asking whether the fire department would come under that.
So for fire department vehicles, for example, public works vehicles, they're not included in this. It's specifically about there's one sedan and one electric crossover vehicle, which is assigned to the City Hall building, and that's what this policy is.
Okay, thank you very much.
So then does that raise another question that we should probably review those other, like if we're doing a vehicle policy now, and it's city vehicle, maybe we should take this opportunity to maybe at our next meeting, review the other two, or if there's two separate vehicle policies.
Yeah, if there is, and how you bring them into one to say, vehicle use policy, city hall, public works,
Because
fire,
I'm
different rules
seeing,
that
yeah,
apply.
like, let's make this whole.
It's a sensible
For the,
approach.
for the call-outs that can happen at 2 a.m., I see why people have these vehicles with them, but
Like just acknowledging that there's different policy that will apply to
Yes.
different vehicles in
Yeah.
different situations.
Because I'll be honest with you, the citizens of Merritt are going to ask questions when they see it.
Yeah,
And they do.
and I would rather, if we have this opportunity to clean up all vehicles in one policy, we might as well do it and make it easier going forward.
And that gives us the ability to defend the policy and why it's being used that way.
Yeah, so if this is, do we defer this then to the next meeting? What's the best way to do it? Or do we just, we'll bring it back again at our next policy meeting with the other?
Yeah, I think at this point, probably the easiest way to do this would essentially be that you provided us with instructions to bring this same policy back to the next policy review committee meeting. And instead of being the city hall assigned vehicles policy, it would be a city of Merritt vehicle policy with different subsections for the different departments.
Love it. If you want that in the form of a motion, there it is.
There it is.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm just want to play devil's advocate here for 1 second. When I do read all these bullets, the only thing I don't see is anything about a valid driver's license. And I don't mean to be rude about it, but let's say we get someone like a young person like Poe, and I'm just pulling a name out. What if she's on an N or an L? Is she allowed to drive? And not that she is, but let's say we end up with somebody here that's on an N or an L. Does our insurance cover somebody who is a new driver? Oh, yes.
I think you're hitting it on the head. Classic not policy question. Absolutely something that needs to be addressed in procedure, that we need to know who is and isn't allowed to do it. For different vehicles, you're going to have to be class 3 versus class 5,
Yes,
like
of
all that
course.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so
That's getting a little finite. I get that part. I mean, I don't want to know that if you're driving the garbage truck, you got a class 3 or a class 1.
And so I think that what we're getting at here is that for this, we need to make sure that there are the general things set out in the policy, that high level overarching direction. Here's what's an appropriate use of a vehicle and not, and then we'll have the procedure behind the scenes that'll lay out all the more details.
So then as a council person, my question is, if you guys are doing all the procedure stuff behind the scenes and we are doing the policy stuff here, how do we and are brought up to speed on what the procedure is?
You generally don't, but you can always ask. So procedure manual, so we have procedure manuals for how we process AP on any given week. And so here's the steps and the process that you're going to do to go into the city software. You're going to upload this thing to that. And like, generally speaking, council just doesn't get involved at the procedure level. If you have a particular question because it's relevant for one of your policy decisions, fire away 100%. But for the most part, you leave that to the staff.
Okay.
Okay, we're good on that?
I just wanted to add one comment, just for your own peace of mind, because typically companies with over 20 vehicles have a fleet insurance. An N is typically for a 2-axle motor vehicle. So for most passenger vehicles, cars and trucks, that's okay. And anything that exceeds, say, 3 axles, or if it has a dumping mechanism, might require either a 3 or if it's a bus of 4, and so on. But for all the city vehicles that we have, an N is still applicable. The only thing they can get fined for is not having the N on the back of the vehicle.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. 4.3, employee recognition policy.
Ooh, these numbers seem low. Sorry, that's just my first comment off the top. Has there been any research done to other communities of what they do, or is this, we can just start that this has not been ever reviewed since the last time it?
So we haven't gone in and done comparables with other communities. Christine has done some work on that. Each municipality seems to have a system and a program that works for them. They have a whole variety of them. It is a little bit like comparing apples to oranges. in some of these cases. If council feels that, or if the committee feels that the amounts are low, then absolutely, please let us know and we can set them accordingly. We can certainly raise them.
So this again is just.
That's the old one.
The old one and the draft is.
And the draft is the new one.
Yeah, I would, so my comments off the top, at least with the commemorative gift and the length of service, like, I don't know, I kind of think that $100 is a bare minimum is where I would start myself personally, and then $100 increments going up from there. But like, I look at it, 40 years of service, $600. If somebody is, I don't know, to me, I would say that that's at least $800, but I don't know how you put a dollar figure to any of this. It's so hard,
and 40 years of service, your payment is your pension. You've done okay. It is hard because what we find is you could make $25 increases to this and probably people won't care, but I've been very surprised in my time here at the types of things that people tend to glom on, and you can say, are the recipients going to care if it's a $100 gift versus a $75 gift? Probably not. Are the residents going to care? Probably not, but maybe. And so oftentimes it just doesn't change. So if you want to direct to, change those values, awesome. I probably wouldn't spend oodles of time researching it. Just if you think those numbers should be higher, great. But
my thought is when I looked at this, I kind of started at 5 years and I went 100, and then every subsequent one went to 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. I mean, this hasn't been updated since 2006 is my understanding at the last one. Obviously, people work long. Yeah, people work longer, people work hard. So most, I'd like to think, work harder, but I would also like to see an option included. I know corporations do it as well, like a gift catalog. Like, is there not a way that we can give them an option versus giving them a dollar figure to say, hey, here's a gift catalog, pick something.
We just did it in the last one.
Yeah.
So, it is exactly what we're moving towards with this new policy. Is you'll notice that it's not like saying we will give you a gift card in the amount of this. It's a letter and a commemorative gift in this valuation, and we are using that.
And does this also cover council members?
No.
Does not.
Nope.
It sure should.
Our gift is getting to sit here with everybody.
I think when I look at this as a whole, I look at it as every person that works in the municipality, and if there's a councillor that hits 20 years or 15 or 10, I think they also have the acknowledgement to be recognized as well. And I know other communities do this. So.
This is for union employees, is it not?
It doesn't say that though.
This is for employees. There's no reason it couldn't apply to council. We would just want direction as to, is this consecutive service? Is this, you took 10 years off, came back, cumulative? If you want to provide direction on that, there's no reason you couldn't.
I'd say cumulative. Why is that such a hard word? Cumulative.
And cumulative with just one municipality, with just ours? There's little things that you can do. If you want to provide direction, though, no troubles.
I'll leave that to you guys to come back with.
Personally, I think getting a gift, it's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, where I work, maybe the values might be similar. I'm not going to state any numbers just because it's just I don't want to. But I don't think it's unreasonable.
Yeah. I look at it like, at least in Logan Lake where I came from, it used to be when you'd hit 20 years, you'd get the esteemed Logan Lake jacket, right? So and that was a goal for some people as staff members. So
and keep in mind at Christmas time, there's normally stuff given to the staff as well, in addition to these gift cards. So
at this, I don't know, I think it would be nice to include everybody that is under the municipal umbrella as one, not union, because we don't differentiate between union and staff. We just say employees, right? So, and not that we're employees, but I think going forward, it's a nice recognition for people who hit.
The only thing is if you do it for council, your lengths of service, you might want to modify because you run 4-year terms. And so generally speaking, council gets a little bit of a gift at the end of each term. So.
Oh, do they? I didn't know that. So is that something?
Request to buy your laptop.
No. You guys want some paintings?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
So there are gifts that come at the end of each term. If you want to roll it so that it was a number of terms, like service thing, versus the actual years of service, because 5 years of service is 2 counts of terms at a minimum right now. 10, you're looking at 3. Just doesn't line up perfectly, but I also don't care that much. If you guys just want to pop council's name in there, Bob's your uncle. We're in.
I'm happy the way it is. I mean, maybe the values are low, but when we look at it, maybe in another year, I don't know.
But then what's the point of delaying it? We're here, it's come to us, staff's brought it to us, what, so we're gonna...
I think that, the fact that the holiday committee that organizes the party in December puts together a nice gift for the staff, and in conjunction with these gift cards, I feel it's reasonable.
You feel that it's reasonable, that what's here, or
Yep.
Okay, so you don't want to change the dollar amount?
Nope.
Okay, I can agree with that as well. I don't know about these December gift baskets or stuff like that. So then my question is that done out of the goodness of staff's heart and not because there's a policy?
I like the policy the way it is, not just me.
Would you include council?
Hmm?
Would you include council?
Well, no.
Just because it's weird years. I love the big, we're literally debating over probably $150 right now.
Yeah.
Just tell me if it's in or out, and we're gonna move on.
Out, leave it. It's not broken.
And I don't think it's broken, but I'd like to see council included.
Okay.
I'm out. I don't think council should be included. Sorry, I'm sorry, Claire. I just don't think so.
I see your point. I just say leave it.
Yeah, anyway, we were debating, when I didn't leave the last time, I got my Apple iPad as a gift leaving, so I did. We all did. We all got our Apple iPads, so. That was
I don't know these things. These are brand new.
This was pretty good for me. I'm not saying that's the standard procedure, but it was decided at that time, we all had these Apple iPads, and of course, they were 3.5 years old. But
So was that your council computer?
It was, yes, it was, and we got to keep it, which immediately went to my wife, and I've never seen it since. But, so in a way, there was something, I don't know, I have a different version, and maybe I'll talk to you about it. I'd like to see something a little different, and maybe we'll put our heads together on that, but I'm with Adam. I prefer that it just stays as it is at this point. Sorry, Glenn.
I think we do need to find ways to recognize council. I just also, if this isn't the forum, let's find a way.
Okay, so maybe that's an option too. So, okay, fine. I mean, I am okay to move on.
Yeah, we're moving on. 4.4.
So just when you say move on, are we advancing this one to council?
As is.
Peter says no. It's good enough the way it is.
Correct. So this one isn't coming back to the committee?
No, it's just, we're good.
Declined.
We're good.
We're just going to move it on to a 2023 update.
There you go.
At $2,006 prices, no inflation.
2017 was the last time.
She's not bitter about this at all.
I can see text coming later.
Hey, sorry, staff, you got nothing. Especially if you've been here for the past 20 years.
4.4, outdoor water use restriction policy. 4.4.
What am I on?
This one you might get excited about because it is redlined.
I did see that. I'm like,
The
just.
graphics are so good on this.
Should have been a teacher, Claire.
Well, yeah, except I'm not a big fan of. No, I'm actually gonna.
Oh dear. Oh my word. Good heavens.
I like summer vacation. I should have.
So basically, we're going on like we discussed, that we're following what the provincial standards are on water restrictions. Go ahead, Mr. Ross. You don't have to put your hand up, Mike's live.
Thanks, Your Worship. The way that we currently operate things, basically about 2 years ago, we moved over to a policy like this one, where essentially the province of BC operate a drought portal where they talk about, everyone gets together on water management issues, and they set up a grid for all the watersheds within the province, explaining which ones are where in various drought schedules from a scale of 0 being absolutely no problems, loads of water, all is good, to 5, we're looking at dry riverbeds and everybody needs to stop doing anything other than drinking very slowly. There's slightly more detail than that. The problem, we thought that it would be a good idea, essentially, because at staff level of the city, let's be honest, we are not water management experts. We don't know all the details of things, and so when we can outsource to true experts and things, we generally like to, so that we know that we're following best practice and best advice. The problem that we found with tying the city's water restrictions policy to the drought information portal the way we did is twofold. The province doesn't start updating that until June 1st of the year. So if there's water, basically dryness or very low levels of water in the spring, then that can mean you're going into May with dry brown grass, and then we're just blithely saying, no restrictions, no restrictions. But also simultaneously, because the watering restrictions can respond slightly weirdly to snowmelt in particular. And so this year we wound up in a situation where we jumped straight from level 0 restriction to level 3 restrictions, because we automatically tie to whichever is the worst restrictions in the area between the Nicola and the cold water in order to support the watersheds. And so people immediately started writing in saying, well, essentially, what changed between last Friday and this Monday? Why are we suddenly going from no restrictions at all to fairly onerous restrictions? And from a public perception standpoint, that's somewhat difficult to explain. Mm-hmm. And so, although we had very good intentions when we locked the city's policy to the drought information portal, we've identified that there are those genuine problems with it. And so we'd like, the proposed wording is slightly softer, where it would be informed by the drought response plan, which means that we would still look very closely at that. But if we think we have good reasons locally for looking at coming off it and having different watering restrictions than that drought portal would indicate, we would go by that, which would hopefully allow for a more nuanced, merit-specific response, instead of looking at the wider Nicola and cold water watersheds at large. One of the other issues that we found and that we've had people write into the city about is about the amount of time that's available between the watering restrictions. And so I'm trying to find where in the table. Yeah, this one. The current restrictions, when we're on 2-day-a-week regulations, then we're allowed to, at the moment, Wednesday and Friday, or Tuesday and Saturday. So if you live at, say, number 2000 at any street, you have an even house number, you are only allowed to water twice, and it's Wednesday and Friday. So then you have 5 days when your water, your lawn will get, say, dry, and then you'll have 2 days apart where you can water it and try to rescue it. And it just seems really bad, instead of either saying you're not watering anymore and it'll just go dormant, or you are allowed to water it spread evenly throughout the week, which will then allow it to continue living through. So the proposed text is to change to Monday and Friday and Tuesday and Saturday, which allows 4 days between and 3 days between. There was one other suggestion which has come in from the public, and you don't have to take if you don't want to, but I did just want to flag it because I told the person who wrote in that I would bring it up. A suggestion has been made that in both cases, the houses should have one weekday and one weekend day, so Saturday and Sunday, and then so that everyone, say, had one day when they're working, one day when they're not, for example, if they're on a standard Monday to Friday pattern. I did check with Public Works to ask if that would have any impact on them, and they advised that they're not aware of any reason why that would cause any issues, because, say, if we have no restrictions, anyone can water on Saturday or Sunday, so they think that would be okay. It is up to you if you want to say, for example, that for whatever reason you want restrictions on Sunday that you don't have on other days of the week. That is open to you, but I just wanted to let you know that people are asking for that.
I think that's something that has been brought up to myself as well, and I did have a note here about that. I was like, oh, it's great that these people get a Saturday, but what about the poor people that don't get that weekend day? Because lots of people do work Monday to Friday still, and some don't. And I just wanted to comment that I've never quite seen a policy like this with the days and the times. It's neat to see. It's
been around for a while.
Well, and I've just always seen that odd numbers water on odd days and even numbers water.
It's actually pretty common. The challenge here is that where it is common, it's often not for the same It's for a different reason. It's
Yeah.
because they're trying to minimize all of the water being pulled on at the exact same time in the municipality. So in places where you have finite capacity to actually deliver water because there isn't a ton in the reservoir, you don't want to shock it all at once.
Right.
So we don't actually need it quite the same way, but it does make enforcement a heck of a lot easier for us. So.
Well, I really like page 27 because it looks like the little shadow man is peeing. Sorry, but that's exactly what looks like happening there.
The mayor is well endowed.
Tell you. You don't mess with that.
Only the mayor who loves comics would have noticed that.
Come on. It's not only the mayor, I get it.
Come on.
It's been discussed.
So what is the guy doing in the Anytime Square? I'd like to see your interpretation of that. Number 3, Anytime, what's he doing?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, Lord.
So if I'm understanding this right, and maybe I'm not, so just clue me in here, we are looking at possibly going Monday, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday. Is that what we're talking about?
It would
Depends on the
possibly
level.
be a Sunday and a Thursday
Well,
for,
you've got even houses and odd houses.
so for even houses, I believe it would be a Sunday and a Thursday then, and then odd houses Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, that's 3, 4, 6.
Which is not in this amendment here,
No.
right?
No,
It's
no.
okay. I'm like, I don't see that.
The one other change here is on table 2.3, and that would be to remove the, so the second time. If you look at table 2.3.
Yeah, I see it there, yeah.
For enforcement purposes, if we are moving to 1 day a week, one time would be really helpful because then we can actually enforce it. If we have 2 different times in a day, we have no way of enforcing anything.
Okay.
But so I'm going to ask the question as, because this is all about enforcement at this point in time. Like is it to have the enforcement or is it to allow people to still have grass in their yards? Because this is also, not that I'm against xeriscaping and lots of people are there, but
That's what I heard, Claire.
I have xeriscaping, but I'm not necessarily, I would like to see people still be able to enjoy their lovely yards if they have them. And I don't necessarily know that a manual sprinkler from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and not including an evening is fair. Like some people, it's, I don't know, it
So
just.
if we're at a level
3.
0 to a level 3, we've got it very open, very flexible. You can do it in the morning, you can do it in the evening. We have it on an honor system. If we're at a level 4 and we are really restricted on water, I'm recognizing we're at a level 3 now. At the beginning of the summer here, if we move to level 4 and we find that we need to really conserve water, to be able to do that and be able to actually go out and speak to people, it makes it much easier if we have one time on one day that people can water. And at this point, you're not able to water, you can water lawns once a day or once a week. And if you could do it just at one time, then we can actually kind of do some sort of enforcement and recognize that, hey, wait a minute. we
So
actually are
6
asking
a.m. to 8 a.m. and 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. are the time slot options.
Or we can change it to in
So-
the evenings.
Yeah, there's a challenge, and I'll just raise this with you guys. So when we initially did this, part of the issue is that in order to keep grass alive, you kind of need to water it twice a week. Otherwise, your best bet is to let it go dormant by not watering it.
Right.
And so there's this magical threshold, or at least that's what RNAP seemed to indicate when we initially talked with them the very first time we did this policy. And so the whole level 4 in general, by saying, hey, we'll let you water things once a week, it's not enough water to have a healthy lawn, but maybe it's enough to keep it from going like that carpet that it sometimes does, where it just out now dies and it's not going to come back the next year. So it is kind of difficult. Once you get to that spot, a lot of people are probably just going to choose to acknowledge that their grass is going to go. Then you have the enforcement question, because it's really not until we get to a level 4 that enforcement matters, like really seriously, because by the time you get to a level 4, there's a pretty critical issue. It's either one of the rivers is down or aquifer is down, whatever that case is. It's a big deal. And so my struggle here is that you've got the need to actually do something about it, and if they're able to do it between 12 and 2, it's really hard to monitor that. But at the same time, between 12 and 2 is the best time to water if you're going to water, because it's dark, you get minimizing evaporation and everything else. And so council is going to have to make a determination here as to if your goal is to have the highest possible degree of compliance, what Linda's proposing is dead accurate. If your goal is to say, hey, we recognize that we're just going to trust the goodwill of the citizens here, 94% of people comply, and we just want to make this as clear as possible what our expectations are, knowing that there's 6% of people that are just not going to give a hoot about what you do. Number might be a little bit higher than 6%, but I think for us the key is really around communication, because we want the people who would comply but just don't know about it. That's the big thing we need to hit on, and that's why there's a nice infographic with it, and hey, you can look on your fridge or whatever it is to see the corresponding level. But overall, I think you guys are going to have to decide, are you wanting to be heavy on enforcement when we get to those higher levels? Because if you do, we're going to have to move to a model where it's one time during the day so that we can actually go check it. It's not super practical to have our bylaw officer guy cruising around at midnight.
No. And so what, out of curiosity, on a given, because when it always comes to these lovely bylaws, it's nice to know what our statistics are. So what are we looking at for past infractions and fines for people who are watering at the wrong times?
I can speak a little bit to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was in Greg's seat, we always started with a warning for people. We're pretty soft on that, especially when I first got here, because I think there was just a little bit less sense of urgency to the overall watering restrictions. They were in place, but it wasn't as big a deal as it is today. And so we always started off with a warning. Then they hit a list for people who were
repeat offenders.
You had been warned.
Yeah.
And then there was a little bit of extra diligence to stop by those places during, those peak times to say, are you complying or are you not? If we had somebody that was watering again right after that, we did ticket them, and it was a $50 fine. So
sorry, it was what?
$50 fines. So we have not issued tons of these. For the most part, people listen up after the compliance. But again, we aren't really heavy until we get to the higher levels in the first place. And so
more than anything, what we're looking for is education and information. There was a lot of door knocking and telling people, hey, your sprinklers on, the restrictions are currently in place, you're not allowed to be watering at this time. People generally turn off at that point, and people generally find it quite annoying if someone's knocking on their door every single time they're watering. So that we do find that is an effective way of actually stopping people. And as I look into the system, we did have a few complaints that were filed by residents last year, and the year before that, a few the year before that. Ultimately, these can go to tickets, but in our ideal world, we wouldn't have any, because we're trying to get people to just stop watering. Particularly, so I've pulled up here the drought classification portal, which is used by the province. So when we're looking at levels 4 or 5, this is when we're looking at adverse impacts to socioeconomic values, or the ecosystem as being likely or almost certain. At level 5, there's the possibility of actual full-on provincial emergency response and responding to things. So we're only at these levels with significant watering restrictions if the province is actually pulling an alarm lever and saying, we've got an actual problem here. And that's when we get annoying, when we start knocking on people's doors. And I know that last summer, for example, I talked to people and just reminding them that people generally respond fairly well when they're told.
Okay. That's fair.
We kind of scale the enforcement to the level, is the short of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you need a recommendation just to come back with the amendments discussed, and including a weekend on that one, so that everybody has an option to have a weekend day.
We can make those changes
Mhm.
that have been discussed, and then we can bring this forward with the changes to council.
You want it to come forward to council with the changes or come back to this group with the changes?
I kind of sit funny on this one because I think that's what the point of this committee is, to come back, but I almost wonder this year with it being a water restriction and already being June, if it's not timely to just send this one straight to council.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we just send straight to council.
If you think that those are the scope of the changes you want to make, you're comfortable in the instructions provided, then that's the right choice.
Yeah, I would. Okay.
I've had several people, just one question, I don't mean to throw a thing into the ointment here. I live beside the secondary school. They follow no restrictions at all. They water whenever the hell they want. And now, I've been told that the school district is not under our bylaw. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
This is about the residential use of water.
Okay, so-
If there are people that have, say, water licenses, then they are outside the scope of our policies.
Okay.
And they work with the province to talk about the restrictions.
Okay.
Commercial and industrial uses within the city are sometimes regulated in some situations. It gets weird and specific.
Okay, so I think at some point we need to get that known because I constantly get complaints going, how come that school field is so green and we can't water?
So my next question would be on that, because I've come from a community that had this exact same problem. Is it possible, because I know we had to take a step further in the summer, because when there was no school in session, those sprinklers seemed to still go on. So as of the last day of school, possibly we could reach out to the school district and just request that perhaps that they alter their sprinkling times to said rules, and because there's nobody in school. The kids aren't playing, they're not.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely something we can raise with the school district. There's two other situations you've probably also heard about. The golf course regularly comes up as watering during this. Why are they allowed to water? And they're on their own system, and so it's one of these things that is difficult.
It's a huge investment that you cannot lose. I mean, and they are on their own system.
They kind of need grass to operate.
Then you have Norgard's. We get calls about Norgard's. It's a
And car washes, I bet.
dust control measure. You don't really want that operation to go without putting the water on it, but it's all. I'll say that there is a degree of tension that I don't know that the policy is going to resolve no matter what happens, because people will just say, well, I don't like that.
And there's log piles as well, which again, in the summer they will occasionally spontaneously combust, and again, we definitely want to avoid that, but at the same time, it does look really bad when we have strict watering restrictions, and there's just water going.
So, and it's just so council is forewarned and forearmed when they have to answer the question, why is the school, why is the car wash going, why is the golf course going?
Is there an option for those discussed properties to be on a water meter prior to? They all are?
I do believe the school board's on water meter.
Yeah, I think they're
Commercial
has a
commercial.
Okay, I didn't know that, thank you.
Do you want me to reach out to Superintendent McNiven to discuss that?
Yeah, it would be a good idea just to get his view on it and because if we have to. Yeah, but again, like Councilor Newman says, through the summer, the fields are getting watered every single night.
And it was
and I'm not going to complain about it too much because they have their sprinkler set where it actually waters 90% of my yard. And then they're watering my yard. I'm like, this is awesome. And it goes back. So I've just always noticed that the school board does not seem to follow. And now I know. I guess I should have asked this question sooner. So.
And something until it was brought up in my past life as well. It was like, oh, well, we never really thought about it. And then all of a sudden it's like all summer long, those sprinklers on both of the schools were going. And it's like, there's nobody even here. But then at the same time, it was almost, does it become a fire mitigation thing that the grass doesn't catch on fire? So because there's nobody at the
green doesn't
schools.
burn, but it also, it's, again, they need that grass screen for when the kids are doing floor hockey or field hockey and soccer and all that other kind of stuff. So
Straw's not fun to place
You
out
can't
on.
let it get so dry that you can't recover it in September either.
Okay, we're cool on that? Okay, moving on to 4.5, community grant aid. You want my opinion? Eliminate it all together.
That's perfect. I got notes, you got notes.
Oh dear.
Well, I don't mean to be rude about it, but I mean, we grappled at TNRD with this several times over this whole thing. What are we at, almost a quarter, 3/4% before we even get the budget that we're giving money away. And I understand some groups need it, I get it. I understand, like the Arts Council, they times that by 3. When I was in council, and this is just me talking, we ended up at some point putting a time limit on groups that were able to come back, because we don't want to become their only source of funding. And there are other groups that want to come in. Now, people will say, well, then you just, when you get to a situation where you've got the same people, you just bypass them and move to the next one, fine. I think the grant and aid is important. I don't think it isn't, and the city initiative is important. One of the things, okay, Sean?
Yeah, I just want to, because I know you're going to come back around to say, hey, this is okay, I just want to consider this. I do want to let you know that there are communities that have cut the grant and aid program. Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't without precedent. Mm-hmm. And their logic and rationale was precisely this, is that one, they were finding they were becoming the source of revenue. Yes. Second one is that because it's not a big program, $50,000-$60,000. In order to administer it fairly, though, it is super time intensive. So you can run it loose, which is how we've often done it. But if you are going to follow up with people, you want their reports back, you want all of these things to actually do it fairly and right, it is a very time-intensive program relative to the amount of dollars that you're giving out. And so it's hard. Like, it's hard to justify that amount of time being spent on it because it's pretty administratively unwieldy. So I think your choices are, if you're going to cut it. But if you don't, just please don't put this like super heavy onerous restrictions on it, because it ends up being very administratively cumbersome.
If we didn't run that, would we then just increase maybe the council contingency or something, and then have groups come to us as they need a special delegation to go to a group event or sporting event for the kids in the community? Or
for myself, that's where I'd like to see it go, is where we have a contingency fund and we entertain,
because last year we had that, a few late ones anyway.
Yes.
We didn't spend the whole amount we had that, yes. And then it's the one-offs coming with a report of what they need and why they need it.
But then again, we also have the availability to simply say no, right?
Yeah.
And then we've done that. So I guess for myself, and I have to be honest, when we were running the ambassador program, without the grant and aid, we would have not been able to exist. It's that simple. Yeah. And without Dana's help and sponsoring a kid, we would have not been able to exist. I know there are some groups that absolutely need the grant and aid. Even though I kind of find it a bit of a pain in the area, at this point in time, I would almost say just let's leave it alone and go where we're going and do what we're doing, because we can always just say no during the time of application. And we can, and also on the form, one of the biggest concerns that I have is, are you doing any fundraising? And that's on the form as well, because no problem helping out, but are you actually trying to help yourself? And for myself, if I see something that says we have not done no fundraising or it's blank, I'm out. It's that simple. I'm out. So just me, I think eliminating it sends a horrible message, and I don't want to eliminate it. I don't want to modify it like CEO Smith said, where we've got everybody going crazy trying to follow up. I would like to see, also in the form of, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also, did you get one last year and what did you do with it? I do believe that's on there as well.
And that's what I was going to comment on, that I was very happy to see that, because it's something a lot of communities don't do, and it's very quick to see, oh, you had it in 2022 and 2021, but you're applying again. So it's like, yeah, I think I've seen your face a lot, and I'd like to see it go to a different organization that maybe is struggling, or that there's leftovers at the end of the year, or because it does go back to council contingency. So we have that.
We do make the decision.
Yeah.
Sarah Smith? Sorry.
One thing to add as well. So we've got the box right now. If it was of value to council, we could also include a line for, in 2022, how much money did you raise, so that you can say, all right, are they checking this off because they raised $28, or are they checking this off because they,
I would love to see that.
Yeah, I would like to see not a substantial, I mean, some groups simply just cannot raise a lot of money. It's just not the way it's going to go. But I would like to see some sort of a dollar number, or how many days did you go out? Like, we did hot dog sales at the stores, right? Sometimes we had great weekends, and then sometimes we had poor weekends. But we were out there for 8 hours, right? So anyway.
Okay.
I don't really want to see us change this too much, because I think it is an important piece of what we have to help people get clubs and groups going, so.
I know I'm not supposed to say anything, but I was just saying to make it less labor intensive for the council, can you not minimize the amount of reporting back that they have to do?
It's not for council, it's for staff.
Or for staff, that's what I meant, sorry.
Yeah, so you'll see in there, it's one of the hard parts, because number 10 is a report to council is required by the end of the year in which funding is received, detailing how the funding was used, how it benefited the community. Failure to file a report will result in no further consideration by council for future requests from the organization. So if you want us to actively and proactively chase that reporting, see you later. Like, that's not a good use of anybody's time. What I think you do is you just build it into the next year's application to say, with that application, if you got money last year, you must file a report, and you guys just use it that way. We started moving that direction this year. You guys did see some reports as part of the application, but I think it was probably, 20% of the applications had accompanying reports. I'm just saying that off the top of my head.
But that's a good opportunity for us as council to use that as a check and balance, that if you did do it last year and you didn't include your report, you know what, I'm going to give you one opportunity, I'm sending it back with you, come back at next meeting, have it ready, and if not, and you're not willing to do it, why would we give you taxpayer dollars to continue?
The other thing I was thinking with that is, we did have a number of them that we saw what their project was, and I don't think very many of them we gave them the full ask anyway.
No, certain percentage.
And I think even if we were thinking of getting rid of it, even if we were just get a little stricter in the application form and we want to see more information, I think that's probably a better thing.
The one thing I would like to see is the night that we're doing this, that the people are applying are actually in those chairs, so we can ask them questions.
Yep.
When I was on council, we had a strict policy that if you were not in the chair on the night that you were asking and your application came up and there was nobody to speak to it, it was punted out. It was gone.
But then that's also our opportunity as well, because there's lots of us that I think that was a consideration as we went through. I took great pride in going through each one of those applications to say, and then I was like, oh, look, that person's actually here. That's great. You know what? That's my way of vetting who's also, I shouldn't say eligible, but willing to put forward the extra effort. Now I know sometimes, or there's an opportunity that you could send a note to council. My apologies that I wasn't able to be here tonight. Guess what? I would love the opportunity next week, but my schedule's jam-packed this week. We're pretty flexible and easily accessible, and I didn't see anybody actually take advantage of that. So there's,
So just to wrap this up then, you guys want the reports. Do you want us to be rejecting those? So, hey, you didn't meet the requirements of this application. You still want them to come forward?
I want to come to council through the applications, yeah. We need to see that.
Same thing for if they didn't fundraise. We aren't rejecting it. It's coming forward to you still. You will make the decisions on that.
But the amendment will be on the application to show.
We'll amend the application to give a dollar value because I think we do this in November, December. The applications go in, so it'll be kind of a year-to-date funds raised. We can add that to the form. Then I think that'll take care of it. Do you want to make it a firm requirement? Because right now it just says it'll be there to. Council may request further information during deliberations. It isn't a requirement to be in the seat. Are you wanting to amend this so that it is a requirement to be here?
You don't have to make it a requirement, but we also don't have to approve it.
That's what we would consider.
Yeah, I think that we might be able to just amend the language a little bit to make it more clear that preference is given to applicants that are present for
at the meeting.
Something like that. So it's not handcuffing you, but it's indicating that you're strongly.
It's how bad you need to be here to defend what you're asking for.
But with that being said, then do we take it? Because quite often if we have $50,000 or we might go over or under, whatever the case is, we could have 50 applicants sitting here, which makes an awfully long meeting for staff and council. That do we amend this to say that we do 2 intakes a year and you will only be considered at 1? Does that make it more labor intensive? I don't know, like.
Once a year.
Okay.
So
just an option because I look at it like.
TMRD allows 10.
10
people to apply for their grant aid, 10.
For 10,000.
For 10,000, that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to me, it's, I said you need to up your game a little bit. I mean, 10 is fine, but 10,000 between 10?
Yeah,
That's a little cheap. Sorry. But anyway, yeah, you're right, but I guess that's kind of the nature of the beast as that meeting comes along. It's going to be a bit of a drag, and it's going to be a little bit of a long. And if we do our homework, we should be able to whistle through it fairly quickly, honestly.
Yep.
Because you go through your report, you know who you're supporting, who you're not supporting. Like a big giant
You
party.
guys did come really well prepared this year. It made it easier.
I hope that I'm in shock to hear that other people don't do that. Like, that's just.
You're not in shock.
No, but I am, because it's something that when you give out taxpayer dollars, I think that anybody who sits in these seats should be very concerned with where they're handing it out. That's an expectation for me, so.
You would be surprised.
Yeah, I guess.
What people don't think is important.
But like I say, without the city's help when we were doing ambassadors, we would not have been able to operate. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
But the ambassadors obviously represent the city.
They do. And actually, we got to a point where we actually gave $3,000 back because we actually raised enough that we didn't need that money and we returned it back. So that was the goal. We met it and we were very happy with it. So
this will come back to, because this is obviously something that won't be going on until October and November, so this will come back to this committee with the discuss.
Do the changes, I'd like to see.
Which I don't necessarily know that there were changes, though, at the same time.
But basically
what was presented.
Most of it is going to be on the form as opposed to in the policy, but we can maybe soften the language or include some language around desired presence.
But I think it needs to, the point again of the committee, I think it needs to come back for a quick okay and then send it to council and done, right? That's.
And one of the big changes in the policy here is to take the amounts out of the policy, and they would be listed in the form.
Yep.
And then this just returns us back to budget deliberations.
Yeah, which is always good. And I think that's the whole point of everything, is really to make it easier for staff. Like, at the end of the day, nobody likes I know staff's opinion on committees, so it's, the point is, though, at the end of the day, to make it easier for you guys, right?
So then, other question, do we want to do this before budget or after budget?
Before, wouldn't we?
Well, inclusive of budget, wouldn't it be?
The way you...
Well, during, but usually it's the kickoff to every budget we usually have is the grant and aid.
So I think that what I would say is I would be a little bit... keep the date for when we put out the applications, but it's the March 1st date that is potentially questionable because that's when the final decision for the grant and aids are right now. But ideally, as you guys know, you want to see a preparatory budget. You want to be looking at something that looks reasonable in January, February, as opposed to April, May, in terms of timeline. And so it might be the case that you want to actually move that up earlier and you want some degree of flexibility with that. So leave that one with us. We may make some recommendations either to remove that date or to change the date so that we'll include it. It will be brought forward as part of budget deliberations.
I like that.
Or something like that.
It's inclusive of budget.
Because that's how we used to kick our budget off. That was our first budget item, was grant and aid and city initiative money. That's how we did it.
And it's often been that case, but in part it's just because of how late budget has historically happened.
Yep. Okay. So we're good with that?
I'm good with that. Do we need a motion, though?
No, I think we've done all our motioning, have we not?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're good. Information items. I have one. I'm going to be handing my spot over to Dana. Dana wants to be on this committee, so same as I've done with Adam with Finance. I'm more than happy to have Councillor Egan take my spot. So Councillor Egan will move on to this committee and I will move off.
So then, in your absence, then who becomes chair?
That would be up to you guys.
Okay. Do you want to just do that?
That would be up to you guys to, if you want to mull it over for the next meeting or whatever.
Wait until we make a formal appointment at the council.
Yeah, let's do that.
So you two can think about who wants to be chair, because I won't do it.
I won't do it. Well, hey, guess what, Dana? I just heard you might get nominated.
So that's my information, and we'll bring that, to the next council meeting, just so it's
I didn't mean to
transparent.
laugh so
So me either, but.
Any other information item from anyone?
No, just a quick conversation, I think. So going forward now that because I don't see a date for our next meeting, I think that's something that should always be discussed at this meeting so that we have it in stone that we're having another one and how the policies will flow to this committee.
Well, maybe during UBCM in 3 months.
September?
I just wanted to say that openly to see if you would laugh.
I'm here to get shit stuff
So-
done.
So
Sorry, I meant
so traditionally,
There's one. It's hi, Mom.
you're getting potty mouth when you get that. So traditionally, this committee meets so many times a year or when it feels it needs to meet, correct?
Yeah, this one is often very flexible. Sometimes it's going to meet with a big full agenda. Sometimes there's going to be a really pressing thing that you need to get through. So generally, we left this one at the call of the chair more quarterly. So
Can I make a suggestion? Because this is just something that, I mean, because I'm gonna anyways.
Yeah, but why don't we wait till the
Council meeting.
we're done as on the committee, and then you.
But could I make a suggestion at the same time? Because I don't.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So, Your Worship, I just wanted to flag that because this is a standing committee under the community charter, you have the authority to appoint members to it at your will. So it's always a select committee is appointed by council,
Right.
so it would need to be done in a council meeting. You basically just announce who's on the standing committees.
Okay.
So you can do that right now and it's
Yeah.
done. So then I'm going to continue on with my
Yeah.
suggestion then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we should do that as.
So now you're debating, turn your mic on.
Dana could have talked all night. That's
He was very clear last night. I
So-
wasn't to say anything.
So in regards to this, do we want to, I'm just looking at it, like, taking no meeting for July or August and then reconvene in September? Like, that's the way unless something comes as a recommendation through council to us.
However, they just told everybody on this committee that they're going to be reviewing all the policies of council.
Mm-hmm.
And we have how many years to go through this? And
It's a running thing.
It's an ongoing, like, I mean,
Not gonna do it all at once.
no,
but like, I expect that in September, we're not going to only have 4 policies in front of us. I suspect that it might be a larger amount of policies, right? Like, the staff is here, we have a new CAO coming in, we have a new CFO coming in. I think there's a few things going on in the background that I would like to see staff focus on right now, and maybe.
We have to decide what topics we want to.
September's a good idea. I'll just, even though I'm not going to be here for it, you guys are doing a good thing by saying, hey, it's not that there isn't work that's going to be happening, it's just going to increase the number that comes forward at that meeting, but the work's going to get done either way.
Yeah, and so I'm just.
Dodge the summer
Yeah,
month
so
for you
then-
guys and for staff, that usually goes well.
September 18th, this is about. We can do whatever. Does this day work for everybody still? Like, is this a good day of the week for everybody, or it's a Wednesday? I like Mondays and I like to get things done at the first of the week, but
I think
don't
a
know.
Wednesday might probably be easier.
Okay, Wednesday's good. So I like Wednesday, so then why don't we go?
Well, because the thing is that if you have a Monday, keep in mind that the staff aren't here Monday, typically, officially.
So far, right, okay. So 13th? Is that Wednesday the 13th?
But that's right before UBCM, and I
It's
think.
gonna have to be though, like, I mean.
How about after UBCM? Because
Then we're
really,
looking at the 27th, it's the end of.
well, it's not like it has to be exact dates, but I'm only just thinking that our main focus should be at that time, focusing on our minister meetings, because then by then we'll know what we're getting.
We can't do all of it at once? I don't know.
Well, people are away.
It's only 3 of us, right? Like, I mean, at the same time, it's,
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking though that we'll probably want to be meeting for those other things and making sure.
Just hash it out and come up with a plan.
I'm fine with whatever, but, with whatever day, but I just think that we'd be focusing on, materials for.
see, I kind of look at it like if we set it up and we just said like we did the second Wednesday of every month, starting in September through whatever, exclusive of July and August. The committee meets monthly, the second Wednesday, or the third, or the fourth, whatever one.
Yeah, it is permitted by the time available by the staff as
Yeah,
well.
exactly, and then at least it's on everybody's calendar and we're not trying to pick and choose a date all the time. And I'm fine if we want to go with the last one of the month, so be it, that's fine, but I would just like to see it consistent. Then everybody's calendars are, we just all know that whoever sits on the committee is good, boom. Fourth Wednesday of every month, I've got a committee meeting and I can't be anywhere else.
I was just thinking for September.
Yeah.
If you guys
Because,
want to get together and just talk amongst yourselves and say, hey, if you just want to bring a proposed schedule that works for you guys, we'll make things work on ours.
But I'm also worried about right now not having a September meeting set with what we have coming up.
That's what I'm saying, pick a date for right now, and then talk amongst yourselves, hey, what frequency
And it can
do
be
you want to do
changed.
this,
Okay.
whatever it is, and then come to that, whatever that meeting is, with what you want the schedule to be.
We're at UBCM the 18th to the 22nd, correct?
yeah,
That is the
and
dates.
we have a council meeting on the 12th. So we have I mean,
So let's go the 27th, and then we'll figure it out after that.
okay.
That's also during the World Fly Fishing Championships, just so you know.
And 3:30 in the afternoon as well?
Are you like fishing?
3:30, Claire?
Oh,
3:30, yeah.
Okay.
Is this a good time still for everybody?
Works for me.
Is it okay? Like, I mean, because we are also, is that going to affect you because you're going to be gone for a whole week at work? I'm going to be gone, but is it
I end up
okay?
taking holidays for UBCM
Okay,
anyway.
same. I will be doing the same.
Any other,
Committee.
anything else? Anything else?